They had no idea what nightmare was waiting for them. Barbara Sullivan and her HOA gang tried to sneak onto my ranch at 5 a.m., creeping through the darkness in pink Hello Kitty caps like the world's worst ninjas. Through my security cameras, I watched the HOA president, who'd terrorized me for months, leading her crew with bags of fake evidence. She thought 5 a.m. was perfect. I'd be asleep, no witnesses. She forgot one crucial thing. I'd been preparing for this moment. What happened when they crossed my property line changed everything. By sunrise, the most powerful woman in our neighborhood was begging for mercy. Comment below what state you're watching from. I bet your HOA would never dare try what mine did. My nightmare began the day I met Barbara Sullivan at my first HOA meeting after inheriting my parents' 50-acre ranch in rural Texas. She swept into the room wearing a gaudy pink suit, carrying a fake Louis Vuitton purse, and sporting 3-inch acrylic nails that looked like weapons. "Welcome to the Willowbrook family, Mr. Cooper," she cooed, extending her manicured hand like a queen expecting her ring to be kissed. I shook it, feeling the coldness despite her plastic smile. She looked at me the way a snake looks at a mouse, sizing me up for the kill. I had no idea then that this woman would soon try to destroy everything my family had built over 3 generations. Within the first week of that meeting, I received 15 violation notices from the HOA, each more ridiculous than the last. $500 for rooster crowing before 8 a.m., $1,000 for non-conforming wooden fence aesthetics, $750 for truck causing road debris, and the crown jewel, $2,000 for fertilizer odor causing air pollution. I spent hours researching local ordinances and found absolutely nothing prohibiting roosters or regulating farm smells within agricultural zones. These weren't real laws. Barbara was making them up as she went along. When I called her to dispute the fines, she cut me off mid-sentence with that sickly sweet voice that made my skin crawl. "Those rules didn't exist before Willowbrook was established," she said. "You have 30 days to comply or we'll take stronger measures." The threat in her voice was unmistakable. My neighbor David Brown, a lawyer who'd lived in Willowbrook for 5 years, secretly met me at a coffee shop downtown to warn me about what was really happening. "Mason, you need to know something," he whispered, glancing around nervously. "Barbara and her gang, they call themselves the HOA Sisters, have been meeting with Skyline Resort Development. They want to turn this whole area into a luxury resort." My coffee suddenly tasted bitter. "But my land isn't part of the HOA," I protested. David shook his head grimly. "That's the point. If they can bankrupt you with fines or get you convicted of environmental violations, they can force a sale. Barbara has a whole team of lawyers ready to pounce. She owns 30% of the resort project if it goes through." The pieces were falling into place, and I didn't like the picture they were forming. The harassment escalated quickly after I refused to pay the bogus fines. One morning I woke up to find all 20 of my chickens spray-painted hot pink, my fence vandalized with IOR in giant letters, my vegetable garden destroyed with salt, and all 4 tires on my truck slashed with "leave" carved into the hood. The security cameras had been spray-painted black, but I could smell that distinctive fake Chanel No. 5 perfume Barbara always wore. It lingered in the air like a calling card. That night, I stood in front of my parents' photo in the living room, my hands trembling with rage before clenching into fists. "I'm sorry," I whispered to their memory. "I tried to be patient like you taught me, Dad, but sometimes you have to fight fire with fire." My father's words echoed in my mind from years ago. "Never start a fight, son, but if someone comes for your home, defend it, with everything you've got, legally, of course." At the next HOA meeting, Barbara stood at the podium like a dictator addressing her subjects, her voice dripping with false concern. "The Cooper Ranch is a blight on our beautiful community," she announced. "I motion that we vote to force his relocation under nuisance laws." I stood up, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. "You have no legal authority to do that," I said firmly. Barbara's smile turned predatory as she waved a thick folder. "I have 500 signatures from residents complaining about your property. Our lawyers will prove you're violating 47 environmental and safety codes." She leaned forward, her voice dropping so only I could hear. "Pack up and leave, farm boy, or I'll make you wish you'd never been born." The malice in her eyes was pure evil. That night, I made a decision that would change everything. I opened my laptop and began researching property defense laws, automated security systems, and most importantly, legal precedents for protecting private property from trespassers. Castle doctrine, stand your ground laws, automated defense systems, I studied them all. Then I started shopping online, ordering 50 military-grade thermal cameras, 200 laser motion sensors, 10 tons of special materials, and many other interesting items that would soon make my property the most defended ranch in America. "All right, Barbara," I muttered to myself as I clicked purchase on the final order. "You want war? I'll give you a war you'll never forget." But everything would be completely legal, of course. At 3 a.m. 3 weeks later, my new AI security system sent an alert to my phone showing thermal images of 5 figures approaching my property line in the darkness. I zoomed in, and my heart raced as I recognized Barbara's face, even with the black ski mask. She was wearing black gloves and leading 4 other women in matching ninja costumes. Through the high-definition audio, I heard her whisper into a radio. "Remember the plan. Sector A, plant the fake drugs. Sector B, dump the dead dogs. Sector C, pour chemicals in his well. We frame him tonight." My finger hovered over the red button on my phone labeled Activate Defense System. A cold smile spread across my face. "Sweet dreams, Barbara. Welcome to Cooper Ranch's grand opening of hell." Over the previous 2 weeks, I had transformed my ranch into what I like to call Home Alone meets Dante's Inferno, all completely legal, of course. I hired a crew that looked like construction workers but were actually former Navy SEALs, friends from my military contractor days. "Remember," I told them as we installed the massive property, automated defense system, signs every 10 feet around the perimeter, everything has to be 100% legal, nothing that causes permanent injury, but I want them to regret ever stepping foot on my property for the rest of their lives. One of them grinned wickedly. "So basically make them wish they were dead without actually killing them?" I nodded. "Exactly. And most importantly, every trap needs clear warning signs. If they ignore the warnings, that's their choice." The legal protection was bulletproof, just like my plan. The defense system I created had 3 escalating levels of deterrence, each more diabolical than the last. Level 1, the outer perimeter, featured deterrence and warnings including 2-meter-deep pits covered with fake grass, hiding a mixture of pig manure that had been fermenting for 2 weeks, transparent nets coated with rotten fish glue and decomposition enzymes, and paint bombs using compressed CO2 that would spray UV-reactive fluorescent paint in a 10-meter radius. Level 2, the main area, included punishment traps like false floors that would drop intruders into pits containing 1,000 Madagascar hissing cockroaches that I kept as pets. The tornado glue system with 4 industrial glue sprayers rotating 360 degrees and a hallway with 20 enzyme stench sprayers mixed with pepper spray fog. Level 3, the ultimate zone near the house, promised total psychological destruction, with spring-loaded chairs that would launch people 3 meters into the air to land in piles of feather-covered glue. The Rain of Hell, featuring 500 liters of cow manure mixed with fish sauce and rotten eggs, and the final room playing Baby Shark at 150 decibels, while 10,000 ping-pong balls fell from the ceiling onto an oil-slicked tilted floor. Meanwhile, Barbara held a secret meeting with her 4 loyal HOA sisters in her home office, pointing at a detailed map of my property she had somehow obtained. The team consisted of Linda Morrison, the violation spotter with a nose for finding infractions, Margaret White, the fastest fine writer in the West, Susan Davis, whose shrieking voice could shatter glass, and Betty Johnson, the neighborhood spy who knew everyone's business. "Tonight, we end Mason Cooper once and for all," Barbara declared, her voice filled with venom. "Bring the fake evidence, the chemicals, and Betty, don't forget the rubber snakes. We'll make it look like he's breeding venomous reptiles illegally." They all nodded like obedient soldiers preparing for battle, not knowing they were about to walk into their worst nightmare. At 5 a.m. sharp, the darkness still thick as tar, Barbara led her team toward my ranch. She wore all black with gloves and a face mask, but still reeked of that fake Chanel perfume. The 4 HOA sisters followed behind, carrying bags full of fake evidence, ready to plant. "There's the gate," Linda whispered, looking around nervously. "Why don't I see any cameras?" Barbara smiled wickedly. "Perfect, the idiot is probably sound asleep. Let's start creating our crime scene at the chicken coop." They walked right past the illuminated warning signs, too focused on their criminal mission to notice. Barbara confidently strode forward, leading her team like a general leading troops into battle. Her right foot touched the fake grass, and there was a soft click. "Aha!" Barbara's scream pierced the pre-dawn silence as she plummeted into a 2-meter-deep pit filled with fermented pig manure. The stench was so overwhelming it could be smelled from 50 meters away. Barbara! The 4X sisters rushed to the edge in panic. "Get me out, this is disgusting," Barbara shrieked, flailing in the chest-deep manure that sucked at her like quicksand. The more she struggled, the deeper she sank. Margaret tried to reach down to help but slipped on the oil-coated edge, falling face-first into the putrid mixture with a sickening splash. The automated system recorded everything in stunning 4K resolution with night vision. Linda panicked and ran to find another route, not seeing the infrared laser tripwires. She slammed full speed into the transparent net coated with rotten fish glue and decomposition enzymes. The whack! The net wrapped around her like a spider catching prey, the glue and enzyme mixture immediately soaking through her clothes. "Help, I'm stuck! What's that smell?" Linda began vomiting inside the net from the overwhelming stench. Susan tried to help but touched the net and snap. Another net dropped from above, trapping her as well. Both women writhed like caught fish, only making the smell worse as the enzymes activated. Betty, seeing her comrades falling one by one, tried to sneak deeper into the property alone. She carefully avoided the pit and the nets using her small flashlight. "Idiots," she muttered, "I'll finish this myself." Her foot caught a nearly invisible wire. Click. Boom! The sound was deafening at 140 decibels. 5 CO2 canisters simultaneously exploded, spraying UV-reactive purple paint mixed with concentrated rotten egg scent in all directions. No! Betty was instantly covered head to toe in purple paint that wouldn't wash off for weeks, doubling over from the overwhelming stench. Down in my underground bunker built by my father during the Cold War, I sat watching 12 monitors while sipping coffee, my AI system analyzing every movement. "Level 1 is 80% effective," I noted in my log. 2 in the pit, 2 in nets. Betty's still mobile but marked. Time for them to experience Level 2. With the help of her husband Robert, who had arrived following her GPS signal, Barbara crawled out of the pit looking like a swamp monster from a horror movie. "Get inside! We have to finish this!" she screamed, completely unhinged, running toward the chicken coop in her manure-soaked clothes. Crack! The floor collapsed beneath her. "Rouge! Rouge!" Barbara's screams reached a pitch I didn't think humanly possible as 1,000 Madagascar hissing cockroaches swarmed over her. The UV lights clicked on, making the roaches glow green like something from a nightmare. Barbara thrashed around like a woman possessed, her clothes tearing, covered in glowing insects. The 5 women ran in complete panic, inadvertently fleeing straight into the barn where I had installed the Level 3 ultimate trap. Slam! The electromagnetic door sealed shut behind them. The lights went out. Then it began. "Baby shark do, dark do!" The music blasted at 150 decibels from 20 speakers. 10,000 ping-pong balls rained from the 5-meter-high ceiling like hail. The floor tilted 30 degrees and was covered in industrial lubricant. A massive LED screen lit up, showing "Smile Karens, you're live on the internet! Currently 2.5 million viewers." And then, the crown jewel activated, the rain of hell. 500 liters of cow manure mixed with fish sauce and rotten eggs poured slowly from above like a putrid waterfall. Officer Rodriguez arrived with his unit, shining his UV flashlight on 5 women lying in various states of defeat, covered in mud, manure, purple paint, and glowing cockroaches. "Is that Barbara Sullivan?" he asked in disbelief. "What are you doing here at 5 in the morning?" Barbara tried to stand, looking like a creature from the depths of hell. "Arrest Masson Copper. He said trap!" Rodriguez looked around, clearly seeing the warning signs, the bags of fake evidence and the chemicals the women had brought. "You have the right to remain silent, which I strongly suggest you use." As the police car drove away with Barbara screaming about lawsuits and 2.5 million witnesses, I emerged in my pajamas, yawning theatrically. "Good morning, Officer Rodriguez. Is everything okay?" "Oh, Mrs. Sullivan? I had no idea you were visiting. My automated defense system must have mistaken you for intruders. Good thing it's all non-lethal and completely legal, right?" By 6 a.m., I had uploaded the video titled 5 Karens versus My Legal Farm Defense System, Epic Fail Compilation, and the internet absolutely exploded. Within 1 hour, it had 1 million views. Within 3 hours, 5 million views. By 6 hours, it hit 10 million views and became #1 trending worldwide. The comments section was pure gold. "The cockroach pit with UV lights. I can't breathe," one viewer wrote. "Baby shark torture chamber while live streaming is absolutely diabolical," said another. "Bro really said Home Alone? Nah, "Hell alone" became the top comment with 50,000 likes. "Justice served with a side of manner" summed up the general sentiment perfectly. Memes were already spreading faster than Barbara in that manure pit. Barbara sat in the police holding cell, still covered in dried mud, purple paint, and the lingering stench that no amount of processing could remove. The other 4 HOA sisters were in separate cells, with Margaret still pulling glowing cockroach parts from her hair. "I want to sue!" Barbara screamed at anyone who would listen. "Those were deadly traps. This is torture. It violates the Geneva Convention." Rodriguez laughed openly at this point. "The Geneva Convention, ma'am, you're in Texas, not a war zone. And torture? You voluntarily ignored clearly posted warning signs while trespassing with criminal intent." He pulled up files on his computer showing the evidence: breaking and entering, possession of illegal chemicals with intent to cause harm, conspiracy to commit fraud, destruction of property, and now we have video of you discussing your criminal plans. You're looking at serious federal charges. David Brown, now serving as my lawyer, held a press conference right at the ranch with the manure pit and sticky nets still visible in the background. "We don't just have video of the break-in," David announced to the gathered media. "We have evidence that Barbara Sullivan and the HOA embezzled $2.5 million from community funds." He projected emails onto a large screen showing Barbara's communications with Skyline Resort. One email read clearly, "Cooper will have to sell, I guarantee it. My 30% of the resort project depends on it," David continued. Furthermore, Mr. Cooper's defense system is completely legal under Texas Castle Doctrine. Every device was permitted and clearly marked with warnings. He has the right to defend his property from criminals. The dominoes began falling fast as Robert Sullivan, still reeking of cow manure despite 5 showers, appeared on national television for an exclusive interview. "I can't take it anymore," he said, his voice breaking. "For 10 years, I've had to follow every insane order from Barbara. She's obsessed with controlling everyone and everything." He pulled out detailed ledgers and bank statements. "Here's proof Barbara embezzled HOA funds for personal investments. She even threatened to have me dealt with if I ever exposed her. I have the text messages right here." The news anchor's eyes widened as she read through the evidence on live TV. One by one, the HOA sisters turned on their former leader to save themselves. Linda Morrison, after doctors removed 47 pieces of sticky net from her hair, told reporters, "Barbara lied to us. She said we were just doing an early morning violation inspection." Margaret White added with a trembling voice, "She threatened to fine my family into bankruptcy if I didn't participate. I have recordings of her making these threats." Susan Davis had completely lost her voice from screaming and wrote on a whiteboard, "I have records of Barbara planning to burn down Copper's house." Betty Johnson, still glowing purple under regular lights, announced, "I'm resigning from the HOA immediately, and I'll testify about all 43 cases where Barbara falsely accused families to force them out." Jennifer Brooks, an investigative reporter who had been tracking HOA corruption for years, interviewed me at the ranch while standing next to one of the massive, automated defense signs. "Mason, many people are saying your traps were too cruel," she asked. I pointed to the camera calmly. "Cruel? I have 73 warning signs, LED strobe lights, and even automated warnings in 3 languages. If someone ignores all of that to break into my property at 5 a.m. wearing gloves and carrying chemicals, they've made their choice. Every single trap was non-lethal and legal. I was protecting my home." She pressed further. "But 1,000 glowing cockroaches?" I smiled slightly. "Those are my pets. Madagascar hissing cockroaches. Completely harmless. I raise them as chicken feed. The fact that they glow under UV light is just a happy coincidence." I gave a small wink to the camera that immediately became a gif. Barbara's empire crumbled faster than a house of cards in a hurricane. The HOA board held an emergency online meeting to remove her. Nobody wanted to meet in person due to the lingering smell. Robert filed for divorce and demanded all marital assets plus compensation for emotional trauma. The IRS discovered Barbara had evaded $500,000 in taxes and immediately froze all her accounts. 43 families filed lawsuits against Barbara for wrongful fines totaling $5 million in damages. Poop Hole Barbara became a global meme, translated into 37 languages with its own Wikipedia page. Skyline Resort Development not only canceled their deal, but sued Barbara for fraud and damaged reputation. My life changed overnight from victim to internet legend. Jimmy Kimmel invited me on his show, where he asked, So you basically turned your farm into Saw, but legal? I laughed and replied, no, Jimmy, Saw kills people. I just gave them an authentic farm experience. Organic fertilizer, pet cockroaches, natural enzymes, it's all very eco-friendly. The audience roared with laughter. That one appearance raised $500,000 for victims of HOA abuse in a single night. But the story was far from over. While Barbara sat in jail awaiting trial, she was forced to watch news coverage of herself on the community TV. Poop Hole Barbara had reached 100 million total views across all platforms. The Baby Shark remix, featuring her screams, hit #1 on streaming services. Someone even created a mobile game called Karen Cockroach Run, using audio from her meltdown. She sobbed uncontrollably when both children from her previous marriages publicly disowned her on social media. Just when it seemed things couldn't get worse for Barbara, a young woman appeared at my ranch. She was 28 years old, dressed simply, with tired eyes that held deep sadness. Mr. Cooper, I'm Emily, Barbara's daughter from her first marriage. I need to apologize for my mother, she said quietly. I was shocked. I didn't know Barbara had children, I replied. Emily laughed bitterly. She disowned me 10 years ago when I refused to join the HOA and participate in her corrupt schemes. Sullivan isn't even my real last name, it's from one of her ex-husbands. Emily handed me a USB drive with trembling hands. I've been monitoring her emails for years. This contains evidence of every crime she's committed over the past 8 years. But there's something else you need to know. She paused, taking a deep breath. She's already hired someone to kill you. They're coming tonight if she doesn't check in by 6 p.m. I looked at my watch, showing 6 p.m. exactly. My phone rang, and I answered while calling my old team. Code Red activated. Looks like tonight we're upgrading to Level 4 protocols. The voice on the other end sounded surprised. Level 4? Are you sure? That's reserved for actual lethal threats. I stared at Emily's terrified face. I know exactly what Level 4 means, but this time we're dealing with professional killers. The law allows us to defend ourselves with proportional force. Emily looked worried. You're not going to kill them? I smiled darkly. Kill them? No. But after tonight, they'll wish they'd chosen a different career path. Time to show them why you don't mess with a combat engineer's home. I didn't panic when Emily revealed the assassination plot, because preparation had always been my strongest trait. Together with my team of former Navy SEALs, we had exactly 4 hours to transform the ranch from a non-lethal deterrent system into what we called Fort Knox meets Home Alone multiplied by Saw. Still non-lethal, but maximum psychological warfare. Level 4 protocol activated, I commanded. We want them alive to testify, but they should question every life choice that brought them here. Within 3 hours, we installed autonomous drones with thermal imaging and sonic weapons. The Tesla fence with high voltage but non-lethal amperage. Tar pit deluxe featuring 3-meter deep heated tar mixed with feathers. The maze of mirrors equipped with automated lasers and flashbangs. And most importantly, the confession room. An automated interrogation chamber that would make them beg to confess. Emily provided crucial intelligence from her mother's emails while she and David took shelter in the underground bunker. According to the messages, she hired 3 professionals from the dark web, Emily explained, pulling up encrypted communications. Codenames Snake, Shadow, and Reaper. They're supposed to be fully equipped military-grade assassins. I nodded grimly while checking our defensive positions. Perfect. We'll play by their rules then. Emily, you and David stay in the bunker and record everything for evidence. This is going to be one hell of a show. The anticipation was electric as my team finished the final preparations, turning my property into a nightmare for anyone foolish enough to attack. At exactly midnight, 3 dark figures appeared on our thermal imaging systems. Snake stood 6 feet tall, muscular build, carrying an AR-15 with a silencer. Shadow was 5 feet 7 inches, lean and agile, a specialist in infiltration. Reaper measured 6 feet 3 inches, a sniper carrying a Barrett 50 caliber rifle. Through our military-grade surveillance, we heard their radio chatter. Target is Cooper, Snake commanded. Client paid $500,000. Clean job, no witnesses, make it look accidental. Shadow responded, copy that. I see a weakness in Sector 7, but Reaper seemed cautious. Negative, it's too quiet. This could be a trap. They had no idea how right he was. From the bunker's command center, I watched through 50 cameras while our AI analyzed their every movement in real time. Wearing level 4 body armor and a helmet with heads-up display, I felt like a final boss in a video game. Welcome to Cooper Ranch final boss level, I muttered. Let's dance. The first to fall was Snake, who cut through the regular fence, not noticing the transparent nanowire behind it. The moment he touched it, ZZZ, app, 50,000 volts of non-lethal electricity coursed through his body. RGHHA. Snake convulsed wildly, dropping his weapon. The automated system immediately sprayed industrial adhesive, gluing him to the fence like a giant fly caught in a web. As a bonus, the glue contained phosphorescent powder and fake radioactive markers that, while harmless, would trigger every airport security scanner for the rest of his life. Shadow proved smarter, scaling the wall to avoid the fence, but he dropped directly into the mirror maze I'd constructed around the house. "What the hell?" he muttered, drawing his weapon and seeing 100 reflections. Flash, bang, flash, bang. Flashbangs detonated continuously from every direction, while red, green, and purple lasers created disorienting patterns. Shadow ran wildly, slamming into mirrors before the floor suddenly opened. Splash! He plunged into the tar pit deluxe. HOH! It's hot! It's sticky! He screamed. 3 meters of heated tar. Not hot enough to burn, but extremely uncomfortable, mixed with a ton of feathers. Shadow now resembled a giant black chicken, struggling futilely to escape. Reaper, the smartest of the three, took a sniper position on high ground, setting up his rifle and scanning for targets through his thermal scope. "Target acquired," he whispered, finger on the trigger. "Behind you?" my voice said through a speaker. Reaper spun quickly but saw nothing. A mini-drone had already released sleeping gas. "Sweet dreams," I said through the drone's speaker. Reaper tried holding his breath, but it was too late. Before losing consciousness, he saw me standing 50 meters away, giving him a casual wave. The precision of the operation would have made my old unit proud. All 3 assassins woke up in a stark white room that I called the confession room. Snake was glued to his chair, Shadow still covered in tar and feathers, and Reaper bound hand and foot. A large screen flickered to life, showing my face. "Gentlemen, welcome to the confession room. The rules are simple. Confess who hired you, why, and provide all details equals freedom. Refuse equals entertainment. Choose wisely." Snake snarled defiantly. "Screw you." I shook my head sadly. Wrong answer. Baby Shark began playing. But not the normal version. This was a 200 BPM gabber hardcore remix that could drive anyone insane. After just 1 hour of audio torture, they broke completely. "I'll confess. I'll tell you everything," Snake screamed with tears streaming down his face. "Barbara Sullivan, 500,000. Through the dark web." Shadow used the tar from his body to write on the wall. "I have recordings. Phone in my pocket." Even Reaper, the toughest of them all, finally cracked. "Sigma Corporation. They're the intermediaries. Barbara paid in cryptocurrency. I have the wallet addresses." The confessions poured out like water from a broken dam. Officer Rodriguez arrived with a SWAT team and FBI agents to find 3 assassins in the confession room crying and confessing frantically, while I sat calmly drinking tea with Emily and David. "Self-defense?" Rodriguez asked with a knowing smile. 100% non-lethal self-defense. David handed over the legal documentation. "Everything is completely legal. They invaded with weapons intending murder. We simply detained them for your arrival." The FBI agent reviewed the evidence and nodded. "This is enough to charge Barbara Sullivan with conspiracy to commit murder. This just became a federal case. The amount of evidence was overwhelming." The news exploded worldwide, with headlines screaming, "HOA president hired hitmen caught by farmers' traps." Barbara was transferred to federal maximum security prison. During her trial, she screamed at the judge, "Mass and copper is the devil. He's not human. No normal person could do those things." The judge shook his head wearily. 25 years in federal prison without possibility of parole, and mandatory psychological therapy for your obvious mental health issues. Barbara's transformation from suburban bully to federal criminal was complete. The 3 assassins' confessions led to the FBI unraveling the entire Sigma Corporation dark web assassination network, the largest in American history. Hundreds of arrests followed across the country. Emily stayed at the ranch, helping with the legal aftermath. "Thank you for not killing them," she said quietly. "Even though they deserved it." I looked into the distance thoughtfully. Death would be too easy. Living with the memory of tonight, hearing that Baby Shark hardcore remix in their nightmares forever, that's true punishment. Emily managed a small smile for the first time. As the sun rose over the ranch, now peaceful once again, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "You think you won? B," it read. I laughed and typed back, Check your commissary account. I put $5 in it, enough for earplugs. You'll need them where you're going. P.S. I heard they play Baby Shark 24/7 in solitary. Enjoy. I added a kiss emoji for good measure. But even as I joked, I knew Barbara's story was far from over. Some people, I was learning, couldn't be saved. They could only be contained. Barbara Sullivan, once the Queen of Willowbrook, was now federal inmate number 45789 at ADX Florence, known as the Alcatraz of the Rockies. On her first day, she was placed in solitary confinement for 23 hours daily, and just as I had prophetically warned, they played Baby Shark classical music version to help inmates relax. Turn this off. Barbara pounded on the steel door desperately. I'll sue everyone, the guard laughed coldly through the speaker. Sue? Have you tried hiring assassins from in here? Oh wait, nobody would take that job after seeing your poop hole video. The irony was delicious and served ice cold. In the ultimate karmic justice, Barbara was assigned the worst job in the entire facility, cleaning the waste processing unit. No, I'm a CEO. I'm an HOA president, Barbara protested frantically. In here, you're number 45789, the guard replied with a smirk. Besides, you have experience with manure. The internet told us all about it. Every single day, Barbara worked 8 hours surrounded by overwhelming stench, constantly reminded of that nightmarish morning in the pig manure pit. The universe, it seemed, had a twisted sense of humor about justice. Her cellmate assignment was the cruelest twist of fate imaginable. Maria Gonzalez, a former HOA victim Barbara had destroyed 7 years earlier, who lost her home and ended up in prison for assaulting Barbara in desperation. Hello, Barbara, Maria smiled coldly. Remember me, the woman you fined $50,000 for growing vegetables in my own garden? You made me lose my house, and my daughter had to drop out of college. Barbara trembled and pressed herself into the corner. Maria, she stammered. 7 years ago, you destroyed my life completely. Now we have 25 years to discuss it. Oh, and I heard you're afraid of cockroaches? Maria opened a small box filled with dried Madagascar cockroaches that inmates kept as pets. 8! H! Barbara's screams echoed through the prison block. The psychological torture was relentless as Barbara suffered from severe PTSD. Every time Baby Shark played 6 times daily over the prison speakers, she experienced uncontrollable convulsions. The sight of any cockroach triggered massive panic attacks that required medical intervention. The smell of disinfectant reminded her of enzyme stench, making her gag constantly. She couldn't eat pork anymore, the trauma from the pig manure pit too overwhelming. The prison psychologist diagnosed her with severe self-induced PTSD, rare but untreatable when triggers existed everywhere. You created your own hell, he told her bluntly. Meanwhile, the HOA sisters faced their own versions of justice in the outside world. Linda Morrison went bankrupt from lawsuits, her husband divorced her, and she now worked as a janitor, reminded of the sticky net smell every time she cleaned toilets. Margaret White was disowned by her children and lived alone in a cheap nursing home, forgotten by everyone. Susan Davis permanently lost her voice and had to learn sign language while suffering PTSD whenever she heard loud music. Betty Johnson fled to Alaska and changed her name, but UV-reactive purple stains still showed under her skin whenever she went near blacklights. All of them were social pariahs, forever known as Poop Hole Barbara's accomplices. My life, in contrast, flourished beyond my wildest dreams. Cooper Ranch became America's most famous tourist destination, featuring the Home Defense Experience Tour, the largest private security training center in Texas, the filming location for the Netflix series The Ranch of Justice, and the annual anti-HOA convention attracting 50,000 attendees. The transformation from victim to victor was complete and incredibly satisfying. Emily Sullivan legally changed her name to Emily Brooks, taking her biological father's surname, and worked as the ranch's legal manager. After 2 years of working closely together, Emily and I developed deeper feelings for each other. We married in a simple ceremony at the ranch, surrounded by friends and the now famous defense systems as decoration. Jennifer Brooks, the reporter who wasn't related despite the name, wrote a beautiful article. From Hatred to Love, the Cooper Brooks story proves karma works in mysterious ways. It became one of the most read human interest stories of the year. 10 years into her sentence, Barbara had aged dramatically, her hair completely white, her back bent from hard labor. She kept a journal that revealed her mental state. Day 3650. I still hear Baby Shark in my head constantly. I still see cockroaches every time I close my eyes. I still smell pig manure in my dreams. Mason Cooper didn't kill me. He did something worse. He left me alive to live in the hell I created myself." The words were smeared with tears, showing genuine remorse for perhaps the first time in her life. Then came shocking news. In a letter from Emily, the daughter Barbara had disowned. "Mother, I just gave birth to our first child, a beautiful daughter. We named her Hope. I want you to know that I've forgiven you, not because you deserve it, but because I don't want my daughter growing up surrounded by hatred. Mason has forgiven you too. He says hatred only breeds more hatred. I won't visit you, but I wanted you to know there's still a chance to change, even with 15 years left in your sentence. Emily Cooper, yes, I took my husband's name. This letter would become a turning point." For the first time in a decade, Barbara cried genuine tears of remorse rather than self-pity or fear. She began participating in prisoner education programs, volunteered to teach literacy to other inmates, wrote 500 apology letters to HOA victims, with only 3 responding but all forgiving, underwent serious psychological therapy to address her narcissistic personality disorder, and donated her meager commissary funds to help poorer inmates. The transformation was slow but real, noticed by both guards and fellow prisoners, who began respecting her efforts rather than mocking her past. 15 years later, Barbara wrote one final letter to me from prison. "Mason, I won't apologize because those words are too cheap for what I did. I only want to say you taught me the most expensive lesson of my life, not through violence or revenge, but through my own stupidity and greed. I heard your ranch is now a symbol of justice. I'm a symbol too of stupidity and greed. Please take care of Emily and Hope. They deserve the family I never gave them. Barbara Sullivan, number 45789. P.S. I still hear Baby Shark every night, in my head, forever." The letter showed a broken woman who finally understood the weight of her crimes. I read the letter thoughtfully before showing it to Emily. We sat in silence for a moment before she spoke. "She'll be released in 10 years. Do you think she's really changed?" she asked quietly. I watched our daughter Hope playing with the chickens in the yard, now painted normal colors. "Maybe," I replied, "but some bells can't be unrung. Some hells are forever. The question is whether she can live with the hell she created." Emily nodded slowly. "At least Hope will grow up in a world where justice exists," she said, "where bullies face consequences and good people can defend themselves." I hugged my wife, thinking about how strange life's journey had been from that first HOA meeting to now. But there was still one more chapter to be written in this saga. One that would reveal secrets darker than anything we had imagined. 20 years after the infamous 5 a.m. incident, Emily and I were renovating the old barn to expand our museum when we discovered a hidden room behind a false wall. Inside was an old safe with a combination lock, dozens of files and photographs yellowed with age, and a leather-bound journal. I tried my father's birthday on the safe and it clicked open. Inside was a letter still sealed with red wax that would shatter everything I thought I knew about my family's history. My hands trembled as I began to read the devastating truth. The letter from my father, William Cooper, revealed a shocking secret. "My beloved son, if you're reading this, you found the hidden room. There are truths I've hidden from you all your life. 40 years ago, your mother and I were business partners with Thomas Sullivan, Barbara's father. We bought this land together, dreaming of building a community. But Thomas betrayed us. He didn't just steal money, he caused the accident that killed your mother. I have proof but never reported it. Thomas had a 12-year-old daughter named Barbara. I couldn't make a child an orphan for her father's sins, but I was wrong. Barbara grew up poisoned by the hatred Thomas fed her. Now that poison continues through generations. In these files is all the evidence. Do what you think is right. Love always, Dad." The journal revealed the horrifying truth that 40 years ago, Thomas Sullivan had deliberately cut the brake lines on my mother's car because she was pregnant with their second child and had rejected his advances. My father wrote, "Thomas was jealous that Margaret chose me over him. He took his revenge in the cruelest way possible." I collapsed to my knees, shaking uncontrollably. My mother hadn't died in an accident, she was murdered, and Barbara had continued her father's legacy of hatred, not knowing the full truth. Among the evidence was a confession letter from Thomas Sullivan himself. "William, by the time you read this, I'll be dead. I can't live with what I've done. I killed Margaret, not an accident. I cut her brake lines in jealous rage. I'm sorry. I know you can't forgive me. I'm leaving everything to you and your son as blood money. Don't let the hatred continue. Don't tell Barbara she's innocent. Thomas Sullivan. But his daughter had become anything but innocent, continuing a cycle of violence she didn't even fully understand. Emily found me holding the letter, tears streaming down my face for the mother I barely remembered. "Mason? What is it?" she asked, then read the documents herself. Her face went white as she realized the implications. "My grandfather killed your mother?" she whispered in horror. "And my mother continued attacking your family without knowing?" I struggled with rage unlike anything I'd felt before. The woman who tried to destroy me was the daughter of my mother's killer. The irony was too cruel to comprehend. I could expose everything and destroy Barbara completely. She would learn her beloved father was a murderer. But then I looked at Hope, now 10 years old, playing outside in blissful innocence. She would learn her great-grandfather was a murderer, I said quietly. Emily wept beside me. "What do you want to do? I'll support whatever you decide." The weight of the decision was crushing. Revenge would be so easy, but at what cost to the innocent? After days of agonizing deliberation, I made my choice. I drove to the federal prison to see Barbara for the first time in 20 years. She looked ancient, frail, her hair completely white. "Mason," she gasped in disbelief, "why are you here?" I placed the journal on the table between us. "Read this," I said simply. Barbara's hands shook as she read her father's confession. The color drained from her already pale face. When she reached the part about my mother's murder, she collapsed to the floor. No, Father couldn't. He said your family were enemies because her world shattered completely. Your father killed my mother because she rejected him, I said quietly, and you continued his hatred without even knowing why. You tried to destroy me, even hired killers, all based on a lie your father fed you. Barbara looked up at me with eyes full of agony. "Kill me," she begged. "Please, just kill me. I can't live knowing I'm the daughter of a murderer, that I continued his evil work. I'm spawned from demon's blood. End me." She began hitting her head against the wall, drawing blood. I grabbed her shoulders and looked directly into her eyes. "No, I won't kill you. I won't become Thomas Sullivan II. She stared at me in complete confusion. "But I deserve to die," she wailed. "Maybe," I nodded. "But Hope doesn't deserve a grandmother who died for her grandfather's sins. This cycle of hatred has to stop somewhere." I made my decision in that moment. "I'll keep this secret," I continued. "Not for you, but for Hope, for Emily, for all the innocent children who shouldn't carry their ancestors' sins." Barbara looked at me like I was speaking an alien language. "Why? After everything I did to you," she asked brokenly. "Because my father chose forgiveness 40 years ago, and I choose to honor his wisdom instead of your father's hatred," I replied. "But there are conditions. You'll spend your remaining 5 years in prison truly repenting. When you're released, you'll dedicate every remaining day to serving the people you hurt. And someday, when Hope is old enough, we'll tell her together, not as a story of hatred, but as a lesson in forgiveness." Barbara nodded frantically. I swear on my worthless life." Emily was waiting in the car when I returned. I told her everything that had happened inside. She held me as I finally broke down, crying for the mother I'd lost, for the father who carried such a terrible secret alone, for all the pain that could have been avoided. "You're the strongest man I've ever known," Emily whispered. "Grandpa Thomas killed your mother, and you still chose forgiveness." We held each other in the prison Browning lot, two people bound by a terrible history but choosing love over hatred. 5 years later, on the day of Barbara's release, Emily and I waited at the prison gates with 15-year-old Hope. "Grandma?" Hope stepped forward uncertainly. "Mom told me everything. I don't hate you. I just want you to promise you'll never go back to being that person." Barbara embraced her granddaughter for the first time, sobbing uncontrollably. I promise with my worthless life, I'll spend every day trying to deserve this second chance." For the first time in decades, the cycle of hatred showed signs of breaking. Whether it would hold remained to be seen, but in that moment, 4 generations stood together, choosing hope over hate, forgiveness over revenge, and love over the darkness of the past. 30 years after that infamous 5 a.m. incident, Cooper Ranch had transformed into the heart of a reborn community. Gone was the tyrannical HOA structure, replaced by a collaborative neighborhood where Willowbrook had become a model for community harmony studied nationwide. I stood on stage at age 65, dedicating the William and Margaret Cooper Memorial Brown to my parents and all victims of cyclical hatred. The crowd of thousands represented every life touched by our strange journey from violence to redemption. Barbara, now 82, with snow-white hair but clear, peaceful eyes, sat in the front row wearing simple clothes. After 10 years of freedom following her 25-year sentence, she had accomplished more than anyone thought possible. She had helped over 1,000 HOA abuse victims find justice, built 20 community reconciliation centers nationwide, provided free anger management counseling to over 5,000 people, and become a living symbol of transformation and redemption. And her latest book, From Poop Hole to Purpose, had become a bestseller with its message that it's never too late to change who you are. Hope Cooper, now 25 and fresh from Harvard Law School, took the podium to announce her new initiative. My grandfather was a murderer, my grandmother was a criminal, but my parents taught me we don't choose our bloodline, we choose our actions. Today I'm launching the Hope Foundation to transform past pain into future possibility. The crowd erupted in applause, while Barbara wept tears of pride for the first time in her life. What had begun in hatred was transforming into a legacy of healing. I gave the closing speech, my voice carrying across the crowd. 50 years ago, Thomas Sullivan murdered my mother out of jealous rage. 30 years ago, his daughter Barbara tried to destroy me, not knowing she was continuing her father's hatred. I could have chosen revenge. I could have perpetuated the cycle. But my father taught me that true strength isn't in revenge. It's in the deepest forgiveness. Today, Barbara isn't just our community center director. She's living proof that forgiveness is stronger than revenge. The impact of these words rippled through the assembled crowd like waves. Barbara shakily approached the microphone, her voice trembling with emotion. I don't deserve this forgiveness, but Mason and his family gave me what I never gave others, a second chance. I swear before the souls of William and Margaret Cooper that I'll spend every remaining day earning the mercy I've been shown. She then knelt before the memorial of my parents, placing flowers with shaking hands. The entire crowd fell silent at this powerful moment. I helped her stand, saying simply, "Stand up, Barbara. My parents wouldn't want anyone kneeling. They just wanted people to be good to each other." The Netflix documentary, The End of Hatred, A 30-Year Journey, premiered globally to critical acclaim. For the first time, Barbara spoke publicly about her father being a murderer, with my and Emily's full consent. I lived 52 years in hatred my father planted, she told the camera. But Mason Cooper showed me we can choose to break the cycle. We can choose to plant something better. The film ended with our extended family sharing dinner. Mason and Emily in their 60s, Hope and her husband Barbara at 82, and 2-year-old William IV, Hope's son. 4 generations united by forgiveness rather than divided by revenge. Barbara passed away peacefully at 85, surrounded by the family she had once tried to destroy. Her final will revealed the depth of her transformation. All assets, including book and film royalties, are to be divided equally between the Hope Foundation and HOA abuse victims. I asked to be buried beside William and Margaret Cooper, not because I deserve it, but to remind future generations that from hatred can grow forgiveness. Thank you, Mason Cooper, for teaching me how to be human. The request de Brown debate, but I honored it, knowing my parents would have wanted the same. 5,000 people attended Barbara's funeral, not former HOA members, but those she had helped, prisoners she had counseled, families she had reconciled, and strangers inspired by her transformation. I delivered the eulogy. Barbara Sullivan began as my enemy. She ended as proof of what my father always believed. No one is born evil. People just sometimes choose the wrong path. And it's never too late to choose differently. As we lowered our casket next to my parents' graves, I felt a chapter closing and a new one beginning. 50 years later, the Cooper Ranch stood as the world's largest museum dedicated to property rights and individual freedom, an international conflict resolution training center, and a global symbol of forgiveness's power over revenge. The monument at the ranch's center bore this inscription: "From the manure pit of hatred blooms the lotus of forgiveness, in memory of all victims of hatred, in honor of all who choose forgiveness." School children from around the world visited to learn not just about the legendary booby traps, but about the harder lesson of transforming enemies into family. 100 years after the events, history textbooks featured a chapter titled The Poop Hole Incident. But it wasn't just a funny story about pranks and revenge. It had become a case study in how ordinary people can defend their rights legally, how hatred corrupts and destroys human souls, and most importantly, how forgiveness can redeem even the worst enemy. The story concluded with this message: if you're reading this while harboring hatred for someone, remember Mason Cooper, the man who turned an enemy into family. transformed pain into purpose, and chose forgiveness over revenge, you can too. It's never too late. The cycle of hatred stops with you. As I write this, at 90 years old, watching my great-grandchildren play on the same ranch Barbara once tried to steal, I'm reminded that justice isn't always about punishment. Sometimes, true justice is giving your enemy the chance to become a better person. And in that process, we become better people ourselves. The poop hole that trapped Barbara that morning wasn't just filled with manure. It was filled with the opportunity for all of us to rise above our worst impulses. Thank you for watching this story. Drop a comment below and let me know. Have you ever turned an enemy into a friend? Because if a farmer can forgive the woman who tried to kill him, imagine what you might be capable of. The cycle of hatred stops with each of us, one choice at a time.
You made it through. You deserve a medal, or at least another BD Stories episode. Hit that next video and let's keep the madness going.